The galactic survey ship Harmony's Edge dropped out of hyperspace, with the usual stomach-churning lurch that made Captain Zexathara's 4 stomachs protest in unison. The Vorthon commander steadied herself against the bridge railing, her crystalline skin shifting from deep blue to concerned amber as the sensor readings flooded the main display. "By the eternal void," whispered Navigation Officer Krill, his insectoid mandibles clicking nervously. "Captain, you need to see this." The planet before them was a nightmare wrapped in deceptive beauty. Kepler 438c hung in space like a jewel of death, its surface a swirling mass of violent storms, toxic seas, and continents that seemed to shift and writhe with their own malevolent life. The atmospheric readings alone made seasoned explorers across 3 different species take involuntary steps backward. Atmospheric pressure at surface level is 67 times standard, reported Science Officer Melandra, her tentacles coiling and uncoiling in distress. Gravity is 3.7 times galactic standard. Surface temperature ranges from -40 to +80 degrees Celsius, sometimes within the same day cycle. The air itself is a cocktail of methane, sulfur compounds, and what appears to be aerosolized heavy metals. Captain Zexathara felt her skin shift to a deeper amber. In her 200 years of galactic exploration, she had never encountered anything quite like this. The Galactic Council's classification system went up to Class 12 for the most dangerous worlds known to civilized space. This planet would shatter that scale entirely. "Seismic activity?" she asked, though she dreaded the answer. "Constant," Melandra replied, her voice barely a whisper. "Magnitude 7 earthquakes are apparently routine. The tectonic plates seem to be in a state of perpetual warfare with each other, and Captain, the wildlife readings were. Getting from the deepest scans are simply impossible." The bridge fell silent except for the hum of life support systems and the distant crackling of electrical storms in the planet's upper atmosphere. Krill's compound eyes reflected the sensor data in thousands of tiny fragments, each one showing death in a different form. "What kind of wildlife?" Zexathara asked, though part of her didn't want to know. "Apex predators that register as large as our survey ship. Some appear to be metallic in nature, possibly silicon-based life forms that feed on the planet's abundant radioactive materials. Others seem to exist in the storm systems themselves, entities of pure electromagnetic energy that hunt in the upper atmosphere." The captain's skin had now shifted to a pale, almost translucent color that indicated deep shock. This wasn't just a hostile world. This was a cosmic horror show, a planet that seemed designed by some sadistic intelligence to torture any form of life brave or foolish enough to attempt habitation. Orbital scan shows massive temperature variations across the surface, Krill added, his voice shaking. What we initially thought were mountain ranges appear to be the spines of continent-sized creatures in some form of hibernation or death. "The oceans aren't water, Captain. They're liquid methane mixed with dissolved metals, and something is moving in them, something very large." Zexathara closed her primary eyes and opened her secondary ones, a Vorthon gesture equivalent to a human taking a deep breath. The Galactic Council would have to create an entirely new classification for this world. Class 15 at minimum, possibly higher. It was the kind of planet that would serve as a perfect example of why some corners of the universe were better left unexplored. "Begin recording official survey logs," she commanded, her voice steadying as professional duty overrode her instinctive terror. "This planet represents a clear and present danger to all known forms of galactic life. Recommendation will be immediate quarantine and a minimum exclusion zone of 50 light-years." "Captain," interrupted Communications Officer Trill, her melodic voice carrying an undertone of confusion that made everyone on the bridge turn toward her station. "I'm detecting something unusual." "More unusual than a planet that apparently spawned in the deepest pits of cosmic hell?" Zexathara asked. "Yes, ma'am. I'm picking up artificial signals from the surface. Organized electromagnetic patterns that suggest intelligent technology." Trill's expression shifted to one of bewilderment. "But that's impossible. Nothing could survive down there, let alone build a civilization." The bridge erupted in a chaos of clicking, whistling, and the sound of Zexathara's skin rapidly cycling through colors as her emotional state fluctuated between disbelief and terror. The idea that something was not just surviving but apparently thriving on this cosmic death trap challenged everything they understood about life in the universe. "Are you certain these are artificial signals?" the captain demanded. "Absolutely certain, ma'am. In fact, they're getting stronger. Whatever is down there is actively transmitting. And Captain, there's something else. The signals are organized in mathematical progressions. Prime numbers, geometric sequences, basic mathematical constants. This is definitely an intelligence trying to communicate. The silence that followed was profound. Every being on the bridge was contemplating the same terrifying possibility. What kind of creature could not only survive on a Class-15 Deathworld, but actually build a technological civilization there? What manner of cosmic horror had they stumbled upon? "Open a communication channel," Zexathera ordered, her skin now a steady, determined silver. "If there's an intelligence down there, we need to know what we're dealing with. But keep our shields at maximum and be ready to jump to hyperspace at the first sign of hostility." The communication array hummed to life, sending out the standard galactic greeting in 17 different languages and mathematical formats. For several long minutes, nothing happened except the continued crackling of the planet's electrical storms. Then the speakers crackled to life with a voice that would haunt the crew's dreams for years to come. Not because it was alien or monstrous, but because it was disturbingly familiar. "Well, hello there," came a cheerful voice speaking perfect galactic standard. "Welcome to Kepler 438c. We've been watching your approach for the last few hours. Pretty impressive ship you've got there. I'm Jake Morrison, speaking for the Kepler Colony Administration. We don't get many visitors out here, but you're absolutely welcome to drop by for coffee and a chat about the weather. Fair warning, though, we're having a bit of a seismic event today, so you might want to park in orbit until the continental shelf stops rearranging itself." The bridge fell into a silence so complete that the recycling of the air filtration system sounded like thunder. Captain Zexathera's skin had shifted to a color that didn't exist in standard Vorthon emotional charts. Her crew stared at the communication console as if it had just sprouted wings and started reciting poetry. The cheerful human voice continued crackling through the speakers, completely oblivious to the existential crisis it was causing aboard the survey ship. "If you're worried about the atmospheric conditions, don't be," Jake Morrison continued conversationally. "We've got full environmental suits available, though I have to warn you, our standard gear might be a bit small for some of your species. We've had Vorthons visit before, and let me tell you, fitting Captain Melquez into one of our pressure suits was like trying to gift wrap a disco ball." Science Officer Melandra's tentacles had gone completely rigid. "Captain," she whispered, "he's speaking as if this is routine, as if they regularly receive visitors on a planet that should have killed them all within minutes of landing." "Mr. Morrison," Captain Zexathera managed, finding her voice after several attempts. "This is Captain Zexathera of the Galactic Survey Corps vessel Harmony's Edge. I need to inform you that your planet has been classified as extremely dangerous. Our readings indicate conditions that are incompatible with known forms of life." Laughter echoed through the bridge speakers. Actual laughter. "Oh, you must be reading the southern continent. Yeah, that's been acting up lately. We had a colony there for a while. But the locals got a bit too frisky for comfort. Nothing like having your morning coffee interrupted by a magnitude 9 earthquake followed by acid rain. We relocated everyone to the northern settlements where it's a bit more stable." Communications Officer Trill looked like she was about to faint. "He's talking about magnitude 9 earthquakes like they're minor inconveniences," she whispered. "The acid rain thing was actually pretty interesting," Jake continued. "Our atmospheric scientists figured out that it's caused by the interaction between the metallic storms and the sulfur vents. Makes for spectacular sunsets. Though you definitely don't want to be caught outside without proper gear. Lost 3 drones to that weather pattern before we figured out the timing." Navigation Officer Krill's mandibles were clicking so rapidly they sounded like a percussion instrument. "Captain, I'm running continuous scans of the planet's surface. The areas he's describing as settlements are showing massive structures, but they're built directly into geological formations that our computers classify as actively lethal." "Mr. Morrison," the captain tried again, "how long has your colony been established on Kepler 438c? Let's see. We made first landing about 8 years ago, but we've been running full operations for 6 years now. Started with just a survey team of 50, but word got out that we'd found a real challenge, and you know how humans are. Nothing draws us like something that's supposed to be impossible. We're up to about 12,000 permanent residents now, with another 8,000 rotating through the research stations." The bridge crew exchanged glances that conveyed volumes. 20,000 humans had not only survived on a Class-15 Deathworld, but had apparently built a thriving civilization there. The implications were staggering. "What exactly brought you to this particular planet?" Zexathara asked, though she was beginning to suspect she didn't want to know the answer. "Well, initially it was the challenge," Jake replied cheerfully. "Earth was getting a bit comfortable, you know. We'd solved most of the environmental problems, terraformed Mars and Europa, and the adventure tourism industry was complaining that there wasn't anywhere dangerous enough to get people's adrenaline pumping anymore. Then our deep space monitoring picked up Kepler 438c, and the initial readings were so hostile that the Galactic Council classified it as a navigation hazard. So you decided to colonize it," Zexathara said flatly. "Not immediately. First we sent a survey drone, but the storm systems fried it within 6 hours. Then we sent a hardened probe which lasted almost 3 days before something ate it. The footage we got back was incredible. Floating jellyfish the size of cities, electromagnetic entities that hunted in the storm clouds, and geological formations that seemed to move with purpose. It was like discovering an entirely new form of universe." Melandra was frantically taking notes, her tentacles moving in patterns that suggested either deep scientific fascination or complete mental breakdown. "He's describing life forms that shouldn't be able to exist according to known physics," she muttered. "The real breakthrough came when we realized that the planet wasn't trying to kill us specifically," Jake continued. "It was just being itself. The storms, the seismic activity, the predators, the toxic atmosphere. That's just Tuesday on Kepler 438c. Once we stopped thinking of it as hostile and started thinking of it as a particularly enthusiastic neighbor, things got a lot easier." Easier? Zexathara's skin had now shifted to a color that suggested she was having a religious experience, though not necessarily a pleasant one. "Sure. Take the metal storms, for instance. Terrifying if you're caught in one, but they're also incredibly rich in rare minerals. We built our harvesting stations right into the storm paths. The electromagnetic predators turned out to be curious rather than aggressive. And once we figured out how to communicate with them using modulated radio signals, they actually started helping us monitor weather patterns." Communications Officer Trill leaned forward. "You're communicating with electromagnetic life forms?" "Oh, absolutely. They're fascinating. Think of them as living radio signals with curiosity and a sense of humor. We call them sparklers. They seem to enjoy playing pranks on our communication systems, but they've also saved dozens of our people from dangerous weather events by warning us in advance." The bridge had fallen into the kind of silence usually reserved for religious ceremonies or public executions. The crew was processing the revelation that humans had not only survived on a death trap planet, but had apparently made friends with entities that existed as living electricity. "Mr. Morrison," Captain Zexathara said slowly, "would it be possible for a small diplomatic team to visit your colony? Under appropriate safety protocols, of course." "Absolutely. We'd love to have you. Fair warning, though, you'll need to sign some waivers. Standard stuff about understanding that the local environment may attempt to kill you in ways that haven't been invented yet, that the weather is more of a general guideline than an actual condition, and that some of our recreational activities might void your life insurance policies. But hey, that's half the fun." The captain looked around at her crew, seeing her own mixture of terror and fascination reflected in their expressions. This was either going to be the discovery of the century or the last mistake any of them ever made. "We'll transmit our ship specifications and prepare for atmospheric entry," she announced. "Great. I'll have our ground crew prep landing pad 7. It's one of our more stable platforms, though. I should mention it's currently being used as a nesting site by a family of crystalline pterodactyls. Don't worry. They're mostly harmless unless you make sudden movements or play music above 60 decibels. The shuttle Diplomatic Courage descended through Kepler 438c's atmosphere, like a leaf falling through a hurricane designed by a committee of sadistic physicists. Captain Zexathara gripped her restraints as the craft bucked and rolled through layers of metallic storms, acid clouds, and electromagnetic fields that made the navigation instruments scream warnings in 17 different languages. "This is perfectly normal," came Jake Morrison's voice through the communication system, though static made him sound like he was speaking from the bottom of an ocean filled with angry bees. "Just push through the purple layer. Avoid the floating things that look like jellyfish made of lightning. And whatever you do, don't let the ship's computer try to logic its way through the gravity anomalies. The planet's physics work fine. They just don't work the way most computers expect them to." Science Officer Melandra had gone completely pale, Her tentacles wrapped around her monitoring equipment like she was trying to strangle the sensor readings into making sense. "Captain, the gravitational field just inverted itself 3 times in the last minute. According to my instruments, we're currently falling upward through solid rock while experiencing negative time." "Ignore the instruments," Jake advised cheerfully. "They'll sort themselves out once you get below the reality fluctuation zone. The planet's got a few layers where the laws of physics are more like gentle suggestions. Great for our energy research department. Terrible for people who like their universe to be predictable." Through the shuttle's reinforced viewports, the crew caught their first glimpse of the human colony, and the sight left them speechless. What they were seeing should have been impossible. Massive structures jutted from mountainsides that were actively reshaping themselves. Bridges spanned chasms that glowed with their own internal light. Buildings seemed to grow organically from the landscape itself, their walls pulsing with bioluminescent patterns. "Welcome to New Darwin City," Jake announced as their shuttle touched down on a landing pad that appeared to be made from some kind of living crystal. Population 23,000 humans, 47 sparklers, 12 indigenous rock formations that achieved sentience last year, and one very confused alien botanist who crash-landed here 6 months ago and decided to stay. The landing pad was surrounded by structures that defied architectural logic. Towers spiraled impossibly upward, their surfaces covered in what looked like controlled lightning. Gardens flourished in the toxic atmosphere, filled with plants that glowed with their own internal light and seemed to be having animated conversations with each other. "The environmental suits are in the airlock," Jake continued, "though honestly you might want to try breathing the local air first. About 60% of visiting species find that the atmospheric composition actually improves their respiratory function, something about the metallic content acting as a natural filter for toxins." Captain Zexthara stared at her atmospheric readings. According to every piece of scientific knowledge accumulated by galactic civilization, the air outside their shuttle should have dissolved their lungs within seconds. Yet somehow she found herself actually considering Jake's suggestion. "Captain," whispered Navigation Officer Krill, "there are humans outside working without environmental protection." Indeed, through the viewport, they could see humans moving around the landing area, wearing nothing more than light clothing and what appeared to be simple breathing masks. Some weren't even wearing those. Children were playing games that involved dodging small electrical storms, laughing as arcs of lightning played between their fingers. The airlock cycled, and Jake Morrison appeared in person. He was a tall, lean human with skin that had been weathered by conditions that should have killed him years ago. Yet he moved with the easy confidence of someone taking a stroll through a peaceful garden. His breathing mask hung around his neck unused. "Captain Zexthara," he said, extending a hand in the human gesture of greeting. "Welcome to paradise. Fair warning, the air's a bit spicy today. We've got a metallic storm front moving in from the east and the sulfur content is about 30% above normal. Nothing dangerous, just gives everything a nice tangy flavor." Zexthara tentatively extended her own hand, noting that Jake's skin felt warm despite the sub-zero temperature readings outside the shuttle. "Mr. Morrison, I have to ask the obvious question. How are you alive?" Jake laughed, a sound that somehow managed to be comforting despite the fact that they were standing on a planet that violated most known laws of survival. "That's the beautiful thing about humans, Captain. We're not really built for any particular environment. We're built to adapt to whatever environment we find ourselves in. Earth was just where we started, not where we were meant to stop." As they walked through the colony, Zexthara began to understand what he meant. The humans hadn't conquered this planet so much as they had learned to dance with it. The buildings weren't fighting the seismic activity. They were designed to move with it. The energy systems didn't resist the electromagnetic storms, they harvested them. The agricultural systems didn't try to create Earth-normal growing conditions. They had learned to cultivate plants that thrived in toxic soil and acid rain. "The key," Jake explained as they passed a group of children playing with what appeared to be domesticated ball lightning, "was realizing that hostile environment is really just another way of saying untapped potential. Every challenge this planet threw at us was also an opportunity to become something more than we were." They stopped at an observation deck that looked out over the main colony. In the distance, massive creatures moved through the toxic seas, their bioluminescent patterns creating an aurora effect on the water's surface. Flying creatures that looked like they were made of condensed starlight soared through the metallic storms, occasionally diving down to interact with human air traffic controllers. The Leviathans showed up about 2 years after we established the first permanent settlement, Jake said, pointing to the massive shapes in the sea.
Scared the hell out of us initially.
Things the size of space stations just rising out of the deep like something out of a nightmare. Turned out they were curious about our thermal exhaust patterns. Now they help us monitor ocean currents and warn us about underwater seismic events. Melandra was frantically taking readings, her scientific training warring with the evidence of her own senses. The life forms on this planet shouldn't be able to exist, she muttered. The energy requirements alone for creatures of that size in this environment should be impossible. That's what we thought too, Jake replied. Then our xenobiologists figured out that the creatures here don't operate on the same metabolic principles as life forms from more stable planets. They've evolved to feed directly on the planet's chaos, the storms, the seismic activity, the radiation, the gravitational anomalies. It's all just different types of food to them. As if summoned by their conversation, one of the electromagnetic entities Jake had called sparklers materialized nearby. It appeared as a vaguely humanoid shape made of controlled lightning, its form constantly shifting and crackling with energy. When it spoke, its voice came through every electronic device in the area simultaneously. "Greetings, visitors from the stable places," it said, its voice like the sound of controlled thunder. "We hope you find our world adequately stimulating. The humans have taught us much about the concept of humor. Observe." The sparkler suddenly split into dozens of smaller versions of itself, which began performing what could only be described as an electrical ballet, complete with synchronized lightning strikes that spelled out mathematical jokes in 3 different galactic languages. "They're natural comedians," Jake said fondly, though their sense of humor tends toward the electromagnetic spectrum. "Last week they rewired our entertainment systems to broadcast sitcoms directly into people's nervous systems. Took us 3 days to convince them that humans need their brain chemistry to remain unmodified." Captain Zexathara felt her worldview continuing to crumble and rebuild itself with each passing moment. Everything she had believed about the limits of life, adaptation, and survival was being systematically demolished by the simple reality of what she was witnessing. "Mr. Morrison," she said slowly, "I think we need to talk about updating the galactic classification system." The colony's main conference room was built inside what Jake cheerfully referred to as a domesticated volcano, its walls formed from cooled lava that still glowed with gentle warmth. Captain Zexathara tried not to think about the fact that she was sitting inside an active geological formation while discussing galactic policy. The humans seemed to find this arrangement perfectly normal, though she noticed they had thoughtfully provided chairs that were rated for seismic activity. "The current classification system just isn't adequate," Dr. Sarah Chen, the colony's chief scientist, was explaining. She was a woman who looked like she had spent the last 6 years being personally challenged by physics and had won every argument. "We've had to develop entirely new categories for environmental hazards. Standard Class 12 Deathworld criteria assume that the hostile elements are obstacles to overcome. Here they're more like dance partners." Jake nodded enthusiastically while casually brushing sparks from his sleeve. The domesticated volcano apparently had strong opinions about the weather, and it expressed them through small eruptions of bioluminescent lava. Take yesterday's seismic event, for example. Magnitude 8.4, lasted 6 hours, rearranged about 40 square kilometers of the eastern continent. Back on Earth, that would have been a catastrophe. Here it was Tuesday, and it revealed 3 new mineral deposits and a previously unknown ecosystem living in the planet's crust. Science Officer Melandra looked up from her notes, her tentacles still twitching with residual shock. "Dr. Chen, I've been analyzing your environmental data. According to our understanding of biological adaptation, the modifications your species has undergone shouldn't be possible within such a short time frame." Dr. Chen smiled, and Captain Zexathara noticed that her eyes had adapted to see clearly in the volcano's shifting light patterns.
"That's the wonderful thing about extreme environments, Officer Melandra.
They don't give you the luxury of gradual adaptation. It's evolved quickly or become a very interesting geological formation. But how?" Melandra pressed. "Galactic biology suggests that meaningful adaptation takes hundreds of generations, even with genetic enhancement technology." "We had some help," Jake admitted, gesturing toward one of the sparklers that was currently manifesting as a small aurora dancing across the ceiling. The sparklers, the Leviathans, The rock formations that achieved sentience, even the planet itself. They all seem to have some kind of accelerated evolution field. Spend enough time here, and your DNA starts getting creative. The sparkler on the ceiling pulsed brighter and spoke through the room's communication system. The humans arrived with excellent base coding, it announced cheerfully. Very adaptable framework. We simply provided optimization suggestions. Think of it as biological debugging with environmental variables. The locals have been incredibly helpful, Dr. Chen continued. Though their approach to problem solving can be a bit direct. When we were having trouble with the atmospheric pressure in the deep cavern settlements, the rock formations simply altered the local gravitational field to compensate. Captain Zexithera felt her skin shifting through colors she had no names for. They altered gravity? Locally? As a favor? The planet's relationship with physics is more collaborative than most worlds, Jake explained. Things like gravity, electromagnetic fields, and thermodynamics seem to be subject to negotiation here. It makes engineering challenging. But once you learn to ask politely, the planet is surprisingly cooperative. Through the conference room's transparent aluminum windows, they could see human children playing in a garden where the plants were clearly not from Earth. Towering trees with crystalline bark swayed in toxic winds that should have stripped them bare. Flowers bloomed in soil that registered as radioactive waste, their petals glowing with their own internal light. The children adapt fastest, Dr. Chen noted, following Zexthara's gaze. Second-generation colonists are showing modifications that our first generation couldn't achieve even with genetic therapy. Enhanced radiation resistance, improved atmospheric processing, some kind of innate understanding of the planet's electromagnetic patterns. They can communicate with the sparklers without technological assistance, Jake added proudly. My daughter Emma had a conversation with a magnitude 7 earthquake last week. Convinced it to delay its schedule by 6 hours so we could finish evacuating the archaeological dig. Navigation Officer Krill's mandibles had stopped clicking entirely, which was his species' equivalent of complete mental shutdown. She talked to an earthquake, he repeated slowly. Well, technically, she talked to the geological entity that was causing the earthquake, Jake clarified. Everything here is alive in one way or another. The mountains, the weather patterns, the electromagnetic fields, even some of the mathematical constants seem to have personality quirks. As if summoned by their conversation, a low harmonic vibration ran through the building. The walls pulsed gently, and words formed in the glowing lava patterns. Greetings to the visitors, welcome to the growing place. Please enjoy your stay and try not to worry about the impending solar flare event. Solar flare event? Captain Zexithera asked, her skin shifting to a pale yellow that indicated incoming panic. Oh, that, Jake waved dismissively. Class M solar storm should hit us in about 3 hours. Nothing serious, just enough to supercharge the electromagnetic entities and maybe cause some interesting aurora effects. The planet's magnetosphere actually amplifies solar events and turns them into something resembling a cosmic light show. Dr. Chen pulled up a holographic display showing the approaching solar storm. To galactic civilization, it would have been classified as a civilization-ending event. To the humans of Kepler 438c, it appeared to be dinner and a show. The sparklers get incredibly energetic during solar events, she explained. Last time we had a Class M storm, they organized what they called an electromagnetic poetry slam. The entire colony was treated to 3 hours of living lightning reciting original compositions about the nature of existence while the aurora spelled out mathematical theorems across the sky. The children love it, Jake added, though we do have to make sure they don't try to ride the lightning. Emma managed it once, but explaining to her mother why our 8-year-old daughter had temporarily become a sentient electrical field was one of the more challenging conversations of my marriage. The conference room's volcano host rumbled approvingly, and new words appeared in the walls. The small humans show excellent potential. They understand that existence is meant to be experienced fully. Captain Zexithera realized that she was witnessing something unprecedented in galactic history. Not just a successful colonization of an impossible world, but the emergence of something entirely new. The humans weren't just surviving on Kepler 438c. They were becoming something more than human while remaining fundamentally human. Mr. Morrison, she said slowly, I think we need to discuss what this means for galactic civilization. If humans can not only survive but thrive in conditions that would destroy most known species, If you can achieve symbiotic relationships with life forms that exist outside our understanding of biology, if your children are developing capabilities that border on the supernatural, you're worried about the implications, Jake finished with understanding. Don't be. We're still human, Captain. We still laugh, cry, fall in love, argue about whose turn it is to take out the garbage. We've just learned that being human is a lot more flexible than anyone realized. The approaching solar storm painted the toxic sky in shades of electric purple and gold, and somewhere in the distance the leviathans were singing in harmonies that made the volcanic rock resonate like a planetary-sized musical instrument. The solar storm arrived like a cosmic symphony, conducted by a mad god with a profound appreciation for dramatic timing. Captain Zexathera watched through the observation deck's protective barriers as waves of electromagnetic energy crashed against Kepler 438c's magnetosphere, transforming the already chaotic sky into something that resembled the fever dreams of a particularly creative physicist. Magnificent, isn't it? Dr. Chen said, standing next to her without any protective equipment beyond a pair of sunglasses. Class M solar storms usually only happen once every few years on most worlds. Here, we get them monthly. The planet's magnetic field doesn't just deflect the energy. It choreographs it. Above them, the sparklers had emerged en masse, their electromagnetic forms dancing through the charged atmosphere like living aurora. They moved in patterns that were simultaneously chaotic and perfectly orchestrated, weaving through solar particles and cosmic radiation as if they were performing an ancient ritual of celebration. "The star sings to us," one of them announced through every speaker in the colony, its voice harmonizing with the electromagnetic static. "It tells stories of distant worlds and the dreams of hydrogen clouds. Today it sings of visitors who travel in metal shells and worry about tomorrow." Jake Morrison appeared beside them, his 8-year-old daughter Emma riding on his shoulders. The child's eyes had adapted to see electromagnetic spectra, glowing softly with their own inner light as she watched the storm. "Dad, the lightning people want to know if our guests would like to see the planet's memory core," she announced casually. "The planet's what now?" Captain Zexathara asked, though she was beginning to suspect she didn't want to know the answer. "Every world keeps records," Emma explained with the matter-of-fact tone that children used when discussing the impossible. "But most planets store their memories in rocks and fossils and stuff. Kepler stores its memories in the electromagnetic field. The sparklers can read them like a library, and during solar storms, the memories get all bright and easy to see." Dr. Chen pulled up a holographic display that showed the electromagnetic patterns swirling around the planet. "We've discovered that the planetary magnetic field contains what appears to be a complete historical record of everything that has ever happened on this world. Every geological event, every evolution of life, every weather pattern. It's like the planet has been keeping a diary for the last 4 billion years. And now it's keeping records of us," Jake added, watching as his daughter pointed excitedly at a particularly bright cluster of sparklers. "The planet seems to find human civilization fascinating. Apparently, we're the first species it's encountered that actively seeks out dangerous situations for entertainment." The sparkler that had been speaking pulsed brighter. "The previous visitors came here by accident and left quickly. They did not understand that danger and beauty are different words for the same concept. The humans understand this truth. Science." Officer Melandra, who had been frantically taking readings throughout the storm, looked up from her instruments with an expression of scientific bewilderment. "Captain, the energy levels I'm detecting are beyond anything in our databases. This solar storm should have sterilized the planet's surface. Instead, it's somehow making everything more alive. The ecosystem here runs on chaos energy," Dr. Chen explained. "The more extreme the conditions, the more vibrant life becomes. During major solar events, we've documented the spontaneous generation of entirely new species. Last year's Class X storm created a family of crystalline butterflies that photosynthesize cosmic radiation and sing in mathematical harmonies. As if summoned by her words, a cloud of the creatures materialized nearby, their wings catching and refracting the storm's energy into patterns that hurt to look at directly, but somehow conveyed profound emotional truths. Their song was barely audible, a mathematical melody that seemed to describe the fundamental structure of reality in terms of pure beauty. "They're trying to teach us their language," Emma said, still perched on her father's shoulders. "It's not made of words, it's made of feelings and numbers and colors that don't have names." The big one with the golden wings is telling us about the time the planet learned to dream. Captain Zexathera felt something fundamental shifting in her understanding of the universe. This wasn't just a successful human colony or even an example of extreme adaptation. This was the emergence of something entirely new in galactic evolution. A symbiotic relationship between a species and a world that transcended every known model of planetary colonization. "Captain," Communications Officer Trill called from her monitoring station, "I'm receiving priority communications from the Galactic Council. The electromagnetic emissions from this solar storm are being detected across 17 systems. They're demanding an immediate report on the source of the anomalous readings." The aurora above them suddenly formed words in perfect galactic standard. "Tell the worried ones that all is well. The humans have brought new songs to an old world. There is nothing to fear in growth." Jake laughed, the sound carrying clearly despite the electromagnetic chaos around them. The planet's developed opinions about galactic politics. It finds the Council's tendency toward caution amusing. Apparently, playing it safe is antithetical to the fundamental nature of existence. "Mr. Morrison," Captain Zexathera said slowly, "I need to ask you something, and I want you to be completely honest with me. What do you think humanity is becoming here?" Jake considered the question while watching his daughter carry on an animated conversation with a sparkler about the philosophical implications of quantum uncertainty. Around them, the storm was reaching its peak intensity, turning the sky into a canvas painted with living light. "I think we're becoming what we were always meant to be," he said finally. "Every species in the galaxy has found their comfortable niche, their safe worlds where they can build stable civilizations. But humans were not built for stability, Captain. We're built for change, for growth, for pushing into places where we don't belong until we figure out how to belong there. And if that growth makes you something other than human, then we'll be the best version of whatever we become," Jake replied without hesitation. "The sparklers, the leviathans, the sentient mountains, even the planet itself. They're all teaching us that existence is about becoming, not about being. We're not losing our humanity here. We're discovering what humanity really means when it's not limited by safe assumptions." Above them, the storm reached its crescendo, and for a moment, the entire electromagnetic field of the planet synchronized into a single, vast consciousness that spoke with the combined voices of every life form on Kepler 438c. "Welcome to the place where impossible is just another word for undiscovered. The humans have learned to dance with chaos, and in dancing they have taught the universe new steps. Let all who visit here remember that life is not a problem to be solved, but an adventure to be experienced." The message lasted only seconds, but it was broadcast on every frequency simultaneously, carrying across space at velocities that shouldn't have been possible. Captain Zexathera realized that every advanced civilization within 50 light-years had just received the same transmission. The age of humanity's hidden paradise was about to end. The age of explaining what they had accomplished here was about to begin. The emergency session of the Galactic Council, convened 3 days after the solar storm broadcast, reached the core worlds. Representatives from 47 different species crowded into the Grand Assembly Chamber on Galactic Station Alpha, their various forms of agitation creating a symphony of clicks, whistles, telepathic static, and concerned color changes. High Counselor Vexkari, a being whose species had evolved from crystalline structures that sang in harmonious frequencies, struck the resonance gong that called the session to order. The pure tone somehow managed to convey both authority and barely controlled panic. "Esteemed colleagues," the High Counselor began, her crystalline form shifting to deep amber hues of serious concern, "we are gathered to address what may be the most significant development in galactic civilization since the formation of the Council itself. 3 days ago, every monitoring station within 50 light-years detected an electromagnetic transmission of unprecedented power and coherence. The main display activated, showing the recorded message from Kepler 438c. Even through the recorded medium, the combined consciousness of the planet's ecosystem was breathtaking in its scope and impossible beauty. Several council members involuntarily stepped backward as the message played. "The transmission," Vexkari continued, "originated from a world designated as Kepler 438c, which our survey records classify as hostile, beyond all known parameters for sustainable life. According to our most recent intelligence, This world has been successfully colonized by the species known as humans, who have not only survived but established a thriving civilization in symbiosis with the planet's extreme ecosystem. Counselor Tethmar, representing the risk-averse Zalithian collective, spoke through a translation device that made his words sound like controlled avalanches. High Counselor, if this intelligence is accurate, we may be facing an unprecedented situation, a species that can not only survive but actively thrive in Class-15. Deathworld conditions represents a fundamental shift in galactic power dynamics. It represents far more than that, interjected Counselor Quinara, whose species communicated through controlled bioluminescent displays. If humans have achieved true symbiosis with a world of that nature, they have essentially transcended the environmental limitations that constrain every other known civilization. The chamber erupted in a chaos of concerned discussion. The implications were staggering. Every galactic civilization had been shaped by the limitations of their homeworld and the constraints of finding suitable planets for expansion. If humans could make any world habitable through symbiosis rather than terraforming, the fundamental assumptions underlying galactic civilization would need to be reconsidered. High Counselor Vexkari struck the resonance gong again, its tone now carrying undertones of urgent necessity. The matter becomes more complex. Our diplomatic team, led by Captain Zexthera of the Survey Corps, has submitted a preliminary report. According to their findings, the human colony has not simply survived hostile conditions. They have achieved something unprecedented in our records. The display shifted to show footage from Captain Zexthera's mission. The assembled counselors watched in stunned silence as children played with domesticated lightning, as massive leviathans responded to human communication, as electromagnetic beings performed synchronized dances with colonial traffic controllers. They have created a multi-species civilization, Vexkari announced, incorporating life forms that exist outside our current understanding of biology, physics, and consciousness itself. Counselor Mektoth, whose species had spent 10,000 years perfecting the art of cautious advancement, spoke through chemical signals that the translation system rendered as precisely controlled whispers. This development presents significant security implications. A species capable of such rapid adaptation and environmental integration could expand into any region of space. The traditional barriers that have maintained galactic stability would be meaningless. Or, Counselor Quinara countered, her bioluminescent display shifting to patterns of hope and wonder. They could teach us to transcend those same barriers. Imagine civilizations that are no longer constrained by finding suitable worlds. Imagine the possibilities for expansion, exploration, and growth. The debate that followed lasted 18 hours and covered everything from xenobiological ethics to the fundamental nature of consciousness itself. Some species advocated for immediate quarantine of the human colony, arguing that such rapid adaptation represented an uncontrollable variable in galactic stability. Others pushed for immediate diplomatic engagement, seeing an opportunity to learn techniques that could benefit all of galactic civilization. Finally, High Counselor Vexkari called for order once more. The decision before us is not simply how to respond to this development, but how to understand what it means for the future of galactic civilization. I have reviewed Captain Zexthera's complete report, including her personal observations and recommendations. The chamber fell silent as Vexkari activated a private communication channel to the survey ship still orbiting. Kepler 438c, Captain. Zexthera's image appeared on the main display, her skin showing the complex color patterns that indicated she had been permanently changed by her experiences. Captain, the High Counselor began, please share your assessment of the human colony's intentions regarding galactic civilization. Captain Zexthera's response was immediate and clear. High Counselor, based on extensive interviews with colony leadership and observation of their society, I can state with confidence that the humans of Kepler 438c have no aggressive intentions toward galactic civilization. Their focus is entirely on growth, learning, and the expansion of consciousness through symbiotic relationships with their environment. And their capabilities for expansion? Theoretically unlimited but practically self-regulated. They're not interested in conquest or domination. They're interested in finding new challenges, new forms of existence to explore. They view the universe as an infinite source of learning opportunities rather than resources to be exploited. Counselor Tethmar's translation device practically rumbled with concern. Captain, surely you understand the implications if such beings decided to expand beyond their current world. I do understand the implications, Captain Zexathera replied, her skin shifting to confident silver patterns. And I've spent the last week discussing those very implications with the colony leadership. They've proposed something unprecedented in galactic history. The chamber held its collective breath as she continued. They want to establish an academy of extreme adaptation, a collaborative research institution, where species from across the galaxy can learn to push beyond their traditional environmental limitations. They're offering to share everything they've learned about symbiotic colonization, chaos energy utilization, and consciousness expansion through environmental integration. In exchange for what? High Counselor Vexkari asked. Nothing, Captain Zexthara said simply. They consider the expansion of consciousness to be its own reward. They want to help other species discover their own potential for transcending limitations. The silence that followed was profound. For the first time in galactic history, a species with unprecedented capabilities was offering to share those capabilities freely, with no apparent desire for political or economic advantage. High Counselor, Captain Zexthera continued, I recommend immediate establishment of formal diplomatic relations and the beginning of academic exchanges. What the humans have accomplished on Kepler 438c isn't just a technological advancement or an evolutionary leap. It's a new way of thinking about what life can become when it stops being afraid of change. The council chamber remained silent for long minutes as 47 different species contemplated a future that none of them had ever imagined possible. 2 years after the first contact with Kepler 438c, the Academy of Extreme Adaptation had become the most requested destination in galactic space. The orbital station humanity had constructed around their impossible world was a marvel of interspecies cooperation, where beings from 47 different civilizations came to learn what their species could become when they stopped accepting limitations as permanent facts. Captain Zexthara, now serving as the Galactic Council's permanent liaison to the Academy, stood in the observation lounge watching the latest group of students prepare for their first atmospheric descent. A class of young Vorthons was being fitted with the Academy's revolutionary adaptive gear, technology that didn't protect them from hostile environments so much as it helped them learn to thrive in those environments. Still seems impossible, commented Dr. Krillnex, the station's insectoid psychology specialist. His mandibles clicked with amazement as he watched the students' biometric readings adapt in real time to the planet's chaotic energy fields. 6 months ago, these youngsters couldn't survive in anything more challenging than a standard atmospheric mix. Now they're preparing to walk unprotected through metallic storms. The beautiful thing about consciousness, replied Dr. Sarah Chen, now the Academy's Director of Symbiotic Studies, is that it's infinitely more flexible than we ever imagined. We just needed to learn how to ask it to stretch. Through the station's transparent walls, Kepler 438c continued its eternal dance of chaos and beauty. The planet had grown even more vibrant since becoming a center of galactic learning. New electromagnetic entities appeared regularly, drawn by the diversity of consciousness now present in the system. The Leviathans had learned to sing in 47 different harmonic scales, composing welcome songs for each visiting species. The Quantum Biology Department reports another breakthrough, Dr. Chen continued, consulting her display. The crystalline collective from Andromeda 7 has successfully achieved photosynthetic fusion with the planet's storm systems. They're now capable of metabolizing pure energy and converting it directly into conscious experience. Captain Zexathera nodded, though part of her still struggled to process the casual way such impossibilities had become routine. What about the hive mind representatives from the outer spiral? They've been working with the Sparklers on developing new forms of distributed consciousness. Apparently, they're planning to attempt a temporary merger with the planet's electromagnetic field during next week's solar storm. They want to experience what it's like to think with geological timescales. On the planet below, the human settlements had evolved into something that resembled living artwork more than traditional cities. Buildings grew and changed according to the needs of their inhabitants and the moods of the planet itself. Gardens flourished in conditions that would have been classified as weapons-grade environmental hazards by pre-contact standards. Emma Morrison, now 10 years old and serving as one of the Academy's youngest instructors, was currently teaching a group of Zalithian engineers how to communicate with sentient architecture. Her lessons were conducted in a classroom that was actually a living cavern system that had achieved consciousness during the previous year's seismic events. The key, Emma was explaining to her students, is understanding that everything wants to help. Even the scary stuff isn't really trying to hurt you. It's just being itself really enthusiastically. You have to learn to be yourself just as enthusiastically, and then you can figure out how to dance together. Her students, beings whose species had spent millennia perfecting the art of extreme caution, watched in fascination as she demonstrated by having a conversation with a magnitude 5 earthquake about optimal timing for landscape modification projects. Jake Morrison, now the Academy's Director of Impossible Relations, was leading a different kind of tour through the lower atmosphere. His group consisted of military strategists from various galactic powers who had come to understand how humanity's symbiotic approach to hostile environments might revolutionize their understanding of conflict resolution. Traditional military thinking assumes that opposition must be overcome. He was explaining as their atmospheric craft rode the chaotic air, currents like a leaf dancing in a hurricane. But what we've learned here is that opposition is often just another form of communication. The planet isn't trying to kill us, it's trying to teach us how to live more intensely. As if responding to his words, a family of electromagnetic entities materialized around their craft, their forms spelling out mathematical equations that describe the fundamental relationships between consciousness, energy, and transformation. The visitors learn quickly, announced one of the sparklers through the craft's communication system. They begin to understand that strength is not the absence of vulnerability, but the courage to remain open to change even when change is terrifying. In the Academy's main research center, scientists from across the galaxy were collaborating on projects that would have been dismissed as fantasy just years earlier. The Consciousness Expansion Laboratory was working on techniques for temporarily experiencing life from the perspective of geological formations. The Temporal Integration Department was developing methods for synchronizing biological processes with cosmic-scale time cycles. The Reality Flexibility Institute was exploring ways to negotiate with the fundamental forces of physics themselves. The most remarkable discovery, Dr. Chen was explaining to the newest batch of researchers, is that consciousness appears to be the universe's primary organizing principle. Matter, energy, space, and time all seem to be expressions of an underlying conscious process that's constantly experimenting with new forms of existence. The researchers, representing some of the most advanced scientific minds in galactic civilization, listened with the fascination of children discovering that their playground was infinitely larger than they had ever imagined. What we're learning here, continued Dr. Chen, is that every limitation we've accepted as fundamental is actually just a temporary arrangement. Gravity can be negotiated with. Time can be experienced as a collaborative process. Even death appears to be more of a career change than an ending. Through the research center's observation windows, they could see the daily miracle of Kepler 438c's sunset. The sky turned colors that had no names in any galactic language, while aurora effects painted equations across the atmosphere that described the mathematical beauty of consciousness discovering itself through infinite forms of experience. Captain Zexthara received a communication from the Galactic Council. The message was brief but profound. Academy of Extreme Adaptation has been designated as the official center for consciousness studies for all member civilizations. Funding approved for expansion to additional impossible worlds. Request immediate feasibility studies for Academy installations on Class 12 through Class 20 Deathworlds. She smiled, her skin shifting to the warm golden colors that indicated deep satisfaction, mixed with anticipation of challenges yet to come. Humanity had not only proven that impossible worlds could be made habitable, they had shown that the impossible was simply another word for opportunity. Below them, Kepler 438c continued its eternal dance of chaos and creation. Now home to the greatest concentration of diverse consciousness in galactic history, and in the depths of space, other impossible worlds waited to discover what wonders might emerge when beings stopped fearing the unknown and started dancing with it instead. The age of limitations was ending. The age of infinite possibility had begun.